their single compound model is tanking, they must have vaccines. And so they have Fauci as their front end sales guy. Then they have, the Chinese Communist Party, the World Health Organization, the CDC, the Gates Foundation, the Zuckerberg, and Clinton Foundation, all of these people who are going to make a killing off all of this. It's follow the money. And so vaccines are the only way out. So when I did my videos, if you remember, beginning of the year on vitamin D3, on boosting vitamin C, I wrote the protocol. Those were going viral, 50 million, 100 million views all over the world. And no one wants to talk about boosting the immune system because that's the actual solution. I get so many calls every month, people saying, Dr. Shiva, I read your protocol. You saved my life. Because vitamin D3 boosts the immune system. It's an antimicrobial. Vitamin C modulates the immune system so you don't get the cytokine storm. Vitamin A protects the cell walls. Zinc and quercetin and iodine ensure quercetin and zinc together work very much like hydroxychloroquine. So the point is that this is the actual solution, which is to boost the immune system, which you can do for dollars, which is not going to generate them their $1 trillion revenue model. And that's what's going on. And that entire push to save big pharma is what we're witnessing. So in summary, the entire pandemic has been created out of fear, fiction, and it's leading to fascism, not truth, freedom, and health. It has nothing to do with that. So they have to suppress freedom, which means don't discuss, the real essence of the immune system. You have the prostitute scientists who basically are into scientific consensus. They keep their mouths shut to protect Fauci because he's their guy who feeds them money. And we have created an unfortunate world where truth, science has been completely compromised, freedom is compromised, and we're going to compromise our health. And everyone's going to be vaccinated in masks. And, we just put out research that we've been spending the last 3 years where masks actually destroy your oral health. They affect the microbiome in your mouth. Your mouth is the essence of leading to so many different diseases. So that's the real science, and it's important people understand that we're living in a world of fake science because the academic world is now the practices the oldest, job, prostitution now. You pay them enough, they'll come up with anything.
So with these masks, do masks stop viruses?
Let's talk about it. We did a whole symposium at our research and education center, and a number of people gave different papers. And the point here is with masks is the following. First of all, with cloth masks, the research that was actually done, the recent work, shows 97% of the viruses go right through. With the medical mask, 44%. And then if you have to wear the N95s, which is for healthcare workers, you shouldn't be wearing them more than 1 or 2 hours. You're going to get migraines. So the bottom line is the establishment always likes to make everything a left and right issue. You have one people saying, well, wear the mask. And if you tell them why they don't work, well, it's not going to hurt you. Just wear it anyway. What's the big deal? Then the other issue is about civil liberties. But if you take away this left-right dialectic and you go right to the heart of it, if you apply science, you find out that these masks are actually harmful. Why? This area of your mouth tries to maintain a particular temperature, Dave. When you put those masks on, what happens? 2 things. You start mouth breathing, so you get dry mouth. What that does is it increases the acidity of your mouth, which means lowers the pH. The other thing that does is you're increasing the temperature in this microenvironment area by 1 to 2 degrees. Those two things are disastrous because what they do is your mouth has about 700 different bacteria, what's called the microbiome of the mouth, which we've been studying for about the last 3 years with cytosol. And we found is there are 3 bacteria, which are the bad bacteria, okay, which cause inflammation, which cause bone destruction, which cause gum bleeding. Well, one of those 3 bacteria, and in fact, most of the 3 love a low pH environment and high temperatures. So with that propagation of that, you're going to get all these different diseases. And what's fascinating is a number of newspapers, a number of dentists, the honest ones have come out and said, Dr. Raimondi in Manhattan came out and said, I've seen a 50% increase in my patients who had no gum disease, no tooth cavities, 50%, Dave. So
Wow.
so yes, the masks are harming us. So the argument, well, it doesn't do anything, just wear it. Well, it doesn't. First of all, it's ineffective and you're harming people. And look at with all the times we're wearing masks, more and more COVID cases, right? We're building herd immunity anyway. The real issue is people care about their elderly people, the people with, pre-existing conditions, who are the ones really at risk, boost their immune system now. And I laid out that whole protocol. I'll probably do a video on it tomorrow. But that's what we should be talking about. But that doesn't make money for Big Pharma or Fauci.
Purpose of a lockdown.
What did the Egyptians do to the Israelites, right? They kept making them work harder and harder and harder to build more pyramids, right? We have to understand that the working people of this country are the ones who are being squeezed by these lockdowns. Those in power, and it's a good transition to election fraud, never wanted to give us freedom. Do you think in 1776 they wanted to give us freedom? No. They gave it begrudgingly because a gun was put to their head. So they threw us some freedoms. But it was one step back and two steps forward, as we'll talk about in election fraud. The slave master never wanted to give the slave his real rights. So the entire essence of this has been to squeeze working people. And this may be hard for everyday people to understand, but those in power, the elites, don't give a damn about you. They have always wanted to squeeze you. And if you look between 1948 to 1972 was when the explosive growth of America took place, when the American pie grew for everyone. And why did that occur? Because during the period of 1900 to 1940, the American working class fought for their rights. Bottoms up. That's how we got infrastructure, nutrition, schools, all of that, because they were being abused. And by the way, the McCarthy era tried to brand anyone who came to fight for workers' rights as communists. That was the way that the right and the left horse traded against working people. But during 1948 to 1971, because of those streets fight that took place, you saw an explosive growth in the American pie. Every income distribution won, Dave, whether you're making $10,000, $100,000, everyone grew. And you can go look at the numbers. It's quite extraordinary. But starting in 1970, 72, you saw two American pies. The one American pie for the 10%, which grew, and the other American pie for the 90%, which shrunk. So if you're a worker today and you're making $50,000, a RAND report that just came out said you should actually be making $92,000. So that other $42,000, Dave, it went upwards. Okay? So there has been socialism for the elites. And the left and the right have been working together against working people. The quote unquote right wing says, oh, these people are socialists against workers whenever they organize. And the left wing, like Bernie Sanders, uses the term of workers to basically not do anything for workers except for the lumpen workers, right? Those guys who don't want to work. So the lockdowns are a phenomenal way of the elite squeezing working people. Because who's really lost, Dave? Not Amazon, not Dunkin' Donuts, the small restaurant owner, the small business owner. Amazon's hiring like crazy. So it's back to monopoly, imperialist, globalist capitalism. The few consolidate power and destroy everyone else. This is organized, Dave. So you basically do power, profit, and control. You have a scumbag like Fauci out there, who frankly is not a scientist. He's a PR machine. He's the one who created the HIV-AIDS correlation, which is absolutely false. AIDS is independent of HIV. Always find a bug and associate the bug and fear people. That's Fauci's fear-mongering model. And this is his second or third rodeo right now. So he's their front man, creates a fear. Big Pharma survives. And the ancillary benefit is all these big corporations who should be failing. The stock market is being driven on bullshit right now. What it is actually doing is they printed money and they're buying, the debt of these very large companies who have no fundamentals. They're propping that up, destroying the small businesses. Of these very large companies who have no fundamentals. They're propping that up. Meanwhile, they're destroying the small businesses. This is slavery. That's where we're headed. And it leads perfectly to election fraud. In 1787, we had 3/5 the compromise, where a black person was 3/5 of a human being. Dred Scott tried to fight that. Well, what happened to him? Well, the Supreme Court said, no, you're not a citizen. Then we had the 14th Amendment with the Equal Protection Clause. And then we had Earl Warren's famous ruling in 1964, which said that we have one person, one vote. But the bottom line today is that with these electronic voting systems, the same elites, there is no one person, one vote. That's a real issue. It's not mail-in ballots. It's not stuff in dumpsters. It's a fact that we are going back to slavery.
So
that's what this is about.
What do you mean we don't have one person, one vote? Because when I go to vote,
that.
Okay.
So I'll give you personal experience. as you know, 2 years ago I ran against Elizabeth Warren, and the
Mhm.
GOP establishment and the Democrat establishment colluded to make sure we weren't allowed off the debate on the debate stage. In spite of that, we got 100,000 votes. This time I ran as a Republican, Dave, thinking, okay, we're going to go head to head. We had 10,000 lawn signs, 20,000 bumper stickers. We had huge signs all over Massachusetts. We raised close to $1.5 million. All of that was put back into, I mean, you couldn't go around Massachusetts where people had not heard about Dr. Shiva. So what does the GOP establishment do? They find a complete fool who can barely talk, and they have him run against me in the Republican primary. And we didn't say one lawn sign of this guy, Dave, one bumper sticker, no volunteer organization, nothing. Election night comes, September 1. I win in Franklin County, all paper ballots hand counted, Dave.
Right.
White working class community. Every other county, 60-40, 60-40, 60-40, 60-40. Don't take this the wrong way. Here's a pasty-faced white guy who wins in Lawrence, all Hispanic, 60-40. Same phenomenon in a black community and same phenomenon in white communities. He was nowhere to be found. And the night before the election, the weeks before, people were saying Shiva, landslide, referring to us. That's when I woke up to election fraud. I never thought it took place in this country, Dave. I thought that was third world countries, And what we discovered by September 9th was these voting systems have a feature in them called a weighted race algorithm, okay? What that means is if you and I are running for office, you sit in your bar, get drunk all day, don't campaign, and I'm out there busting my ass, and you get 500 votes and I get 2,000 votes, guess what they can do, Dave? They can multiply your votes by, let's say, 4. So you end up getting 2,000 votes. And then they take my 2,000 and multiply it by half. So I end up getting 1,000 votes, okay? So net of 3,000 votes. The original actual votes were 2,500, which means you have 500 more votes than voters. What we noticed was we went to various precincts across Massachusetts, towns, and we said, can you give me the list of people who actually voted and the actual ballots cast? Boston, 4,114 more votes than voters, okay? 1,780 more votes than voters in Newton, and so on.
Wow.
That is a feature, not of paper ballots, and even if you got mail-in ballots all done, the electronic voting systems is where the real crime scene is. That's where the real crime scene is. And I was the first one to really bring this out. You saw it in my Arizona testimony, in Michigan, etc. The GOP establishment is making money off election fraud right now. They're talking about mail-in ballots, which is what the Democrats used to do with voter suppression. Voter suppression, you're hurting blacks. You see, both parties use election fraud, the fake version, not to go to the real issue, which is the computer algorithms, because both parties have been using that. And so when I started exposing this on September 1, when the primary was stolen from us, I put out a tweet. I said, election fraud took place in third world Massachusetts. And I'm glad we have the Second Amendment. And between September 1 to September 25th, I was exposing what we were discovering, that when you go to the electronic voting machines and you put in the paper ballot, Dave, like you just said,
right.
Guess what it does? That machine scans it and it makes an image. You got it?
Yes.
A ballot image is made. It's generated. That ballot image is what is counted. So what's a ballot? It's a ballot image. The paper is stuck over here. And when the ballot image is created, it creates what's called a CVR record, cast vote record, and a series of cast vote records determines what's called the list vote record, okay? So on September 9th, I said to the Secretary of State of Massachusetts, I want the ballot images because I'm a federal candidate. By federal law, they are supposed to retain those for 22 months. They said, oh, we delete them. We turned that feature off, Dave, okay? I started tweeting that out. On September 25th, in an exchange with the Secretary of State of Massachusetts, she says, yeah, we delete them. We don't have to save them. I say that you're violating federal law. I said, this election should be nullified. That email conversation I tweeted out on September 25th, 26th. Within 11 hours, Dave, I am banned off Twitter for 21 days. And we had, at that point, moved our campaign to a write-in campaign. We were putting out, 1.5 million of these cards, Dave, all over Mass. That's a volunteer force we had. So they banned me off Twitter, never been banned before. I mean, I said a lot of crazy things. Mm-hmm. But what we discovered, Dave, was I sued the Secretary of State and I asked for a temporary restraining order that they would What we found out was the Secretary of State, Dave, had contacted Twitter. Not Twitter did this on their own. The state contacted Twitter on a political candidate.
Holy.
So no lawyer wanted to take on the government. I had to do this myself, Dave. I had to learn the law. I had to learn case law. So it was me against 3 lawyers in federal court. And we filed the restraining order and the lawsuit. And I won, Dave. No media covered this.
No.
What we have in Massachusetts is the landmark lawsuit. It's 2 lawsuits. So this lawsuit was the judge ripped the other side. And he said, if you didn't like Dr. Shiva's discussion about exposing your ballot images, that you destroyed them, because what we did, the reason that tweet was important was I showed that they're violating federal law, Dave.
Right.
So they had to shut me down. And the judge asked him, why didn't you simply go on Twitter? Well, it turned out in the testimony, that the Secretary of State of Massachusetts contacted Twitter. Why? Because they have a Twitter partnership, Dave. They're not because
they have a partnership.
The secretary, it gets even more interesting. So the young woman spilt her guts, who was a spokesperson. She said, the judge said, who told you to call Twitter? She goes, my general counsel did. And what did you do? She goes, I went and filled out a form using the Twitter handle of the official Secretary of State. And then she said, we have a Twitter partnership. Meanwhile, the attorney was lying on the other side saying, oh, anyone could have complained about Shiva. They would have been treated equally. They get high priority. And then what happened was it turns out that the Secretary of State and the election director in Massachusetts belongs to an organization called the National Association of State Election Directors. This came out in testimony. They had contacted them. Now, why is this important? The state election directors and the Secretary of State are the ones who certify the voting machines, Dave. You get it?
Are these the...
You see, Democrats own one voting machine system and Republicans own the other.
I see. Okay.
All right? It's all voting machines, all of them. So we had exposed the real crime scene is the computer algorithms. That's what it is. And so they had to ban me and they colluded. It turns out the National Association of State Election Directors was called by Secretary of State in Massachusetts and they contacted Twitter. They even have a higher priority relationship. This was Chinese Communist Party. You're calling a state agency is calling a big tech to shut down a political candidate, which is the grossest violation of the First Amendment. The judge supported us. And remember, they don't give a restraining order unless they know you're going to win the whole case. He goes, more than likely, Dr. Shiva will win the whole lawsuit. So we have a First Amendment lawsuit. Separate from that, I filed a decertification lawsuit, okay, which is saying one person, one vote is a real issue here. These computer algorithms. And that is in the courts right now. You know what the GOP establishment scumbags do in Massachusetts? They find 5 numbnuts to file a lawsuit about mail-in ballots because they wanted to take away our lawsuits shine that it was building. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So the mail-in ballot issue is a ruse. Yes, it'll generate some interest, but that's not the crime scene. The real crime scene is the computer algorithms.
So do you think this is
countrywide? Countrywide. And, look, what's fascinating is I find myself as a 14-year-old kid, I've been working on computer algorithms, right? I did the first stuff to analyze sleep patterns and ultrasonic wave analysis. I've been working on face recognition, handwriting recognition, all different types of pattern recognition problems. And here I find myself in this very interesting situation. Election fraud is math. It's pattern analysis.
Right.
So when I saw the math, I was able to show, like in Michigan, there's a beautiful hyperbolic curve, which is a normal pattern, and they had a straight line, which means they're applying a fixed algorithm. We don't have one person, one vote. The banana republic and the third world is what this country is becoming or has become. It is Dred Scott going ubiquitous, right? We're all slaves, okay? All of us.
So we
don't have one person, one vote. The banana republic and the third world is what this country is becoming or has become. It is Dred Scott going ubiquitous, right? We're all slaves, okay? All of us. That's what the elites wanted. They never wanted to give us freedom. Come on. And people think we got some freedom that you have it forever. No, you don't have it forever. So there is no one person, one vote, as long as you have electronic voting system. Solution: everything needs to go to paper ballots, hand counted, local communities, and people need to fight there. Destroy these electronic voting machines. And this is a technologist telling you this. And when the precinct counts the vote, that midnight, it should be posted right then and there. What do they do right now? It goes into a memory card. They take the memory card to central tabulators, and they can do whatever the hell they want. The entire system is a fraud. Tucker Carlson, he didn't say anything about this. Now he's saying there's rigging. He's your master grifter. He says it now because he has been part of it, complicit. What evidence do you need? They talk about evidence. What is evidence? Evidence is unambiguous prediction. Well, the ambiguity of these systems is the input is ambiguous. You don't know who's really voting. The fact that you can multiply votes by fractional decimals makes the output completely garbage. It's garbage in, garbage out. The evidence is we shouldn't have to be proving evidence of fraud. The state should prove that the numbers that we're seeing are actually real, Dave, and they can't because they destroy ballot images, which are the chain of link, the chain of custody between the numbers you see on Fox News and the actual paper that came in. You follow what I'm saying? Country is that we're all being made slaves, and you're looking at somebody who came from India where I was considered an untouchable. The reason my mother and my father and I came here, was rule of law, one person, one vote. Because in India, an untouchable was considered worse than a human. And so people need to wake the F up. We do not have one person, one vote. As long as we have electronic voting systems, you're not guaranteed that. Your votes are being multiplied. And this is going on everywhere.
So we have